Recording to the cloud in progress. Welcome to the
Yes,
Songcast, Danny. How's it going, man?
thank you. It's going great.
Cheers. What are we drinking over there? I have
I,
turmeric tea. What do you have?
I have a Holland lager beer. I should be drinking tea, but I decided to start a problem. So.
Well, what would life be if not overcoming challenges? So,
Hmm.
you're already mastered the guitar, so it's time to like go in the other direction and cure a vice.
Man, I don't feel like I mastered the guitar. I've
Yeah.
been I've been just practicing lately, trying to. It's weird. I have like a 2.5-year-old, so it's been like way more time off the guitar than I'm used to.
Yeah.
Like when I have time, I have to you know, really use it and like make albums and whatever, play shows and
Like
just to
work.
have, yeah, like work at it. But like, it's weird like when you're in my kind of, like in fusion or stuff like that. After a while, if you don't like work out new shit, it's like, why am I even making another album? I'm just playing the same shit. So you have to like get back into like thinking about updating the operating system.
Yeah, totally.
Uh,
I guess that gets harder. I mean, you've toured with Holsworth and Henderson and not Matheny. Who
no,
else?
Henderson, Holdsworth. I mean, mainly just with Marbin doing our own thing.
Right.
We played. We just finished making an album with Matheny's former drummer Paul Wardico. He was in the Matheny group from like the mid '80s till 2000, and we did one album with his current drummer, with Antonio Sanchez. We played with
Got
Steve Rodby, the bassist from the in the group. Yeah, it's yeah. We were the opener band for these bigger fusion acts back when we started,
it.
and yeah, lately we've just been doing our own thing.
So how are you pushing those boundaries if the ceiling is already so high? Like how do you push and who do you draw from? Because Henderson and Holsworth, for example, have like pretty different approaches to playing out and to, pushing the
Oh,
boundaries. So do
yeah.
you
I
want to get nerdy? Do
mean,
you want to get nerdy with it? What are you thinking and what's
yeah,
your
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's well, w- when I first of all, these two specifically were like my biggest like idols in high school. I would say like I was just constantly listening to tribal tech, mainly Scott Henderson. I really loved him, and Alan Holdsworth. I guess when I was in high school, like I was really listening to Metal Fatigue a lot and uh, those kind of albums. Like I really was into fusion. My first love was like shrapnel kind of shred stuff, like Steve Vai and Greg Howe.
awesome?
I liked a lot, and Sean Lane, and that was kind of like a gateway drug to like the hardcore fusion guys. But I always loved like high gain delay sound, sort of the opposite of what's hip today, like just like the driest like
Sure,
funk strumming, people
sure.
playing with like no ambiance. It's we always had a saying in the band: if it's too dry, you're doing it wrong.
It works
but
on a couple levels.
but a lot of people now are really into shaving them dry.
It's a strange, like synthetic, overcompressed tone. It's cool. I'm about all of it. I prefer the soaring God tone with delay, reverb, high gain as well. But yeah, it's a unique pivot. I mean, it has to change in some way.
Do
But
you think there are any people who play dry who have long hair?
I try who have long hair. That's an interesting. I don't know. Correlation doesn't imply causation, but I'm gonna have to make a note of this and look into that. Um, it's interesting the arc you mentioned, like shred into basically jazz fusion. It doesn't often go the other direction, though, does it? I don't know that many
No.
people who are like straight ahead or something, and then get into like rock later. There's like the joke about telling a jazz player to like bend a string or something. But
Yeah, I mean, shred is a lot like professional wrestling. You know what I mean? Like you could be like so into it, and then one day you're like, something about this isn't real. You know what I mean? It's just like you see through through the curtain or something, and at least that was my experience with it. Like there's something very, it's like video games or something like that, and there are a lot of adults who play video games, and it's okay to be a man child. It's just the musical extension of that. It's fine. I don't care. But I mean, I like it. I'm childish. But there's something about just a little bit more grown up about the other thing. Or it's just either that, or it's just like people who kind of like get into like harder and harder forms of porn, and then you just can't get a boner anymore for like, it's like, it's not altered. It's like so diatonic.
Yeah.
Sick of this shit. uh,
So with the shred thing, it's kind of what you're getting at. That there's no real harmonic consideration. They're just like wanking over one chord, which is not that cool.
no, I mean it's honestly the cool ones are cool. I mean, like Ingve's cool. I don't. It's like, there's just the when you think about like the great shred solos, like I don't know, like the top five like solos or songs and shred, like Black Star, For the Love of God, I don't know, Satch Boogie, like something from Introspection maybe. I don't know, like they have all the elements of great jazz soloing. It's kick-ass melodies, it grooves, great tone, interesting rhythmic ideas. I think that's the most part. But I think a lot of times the idea, the rhythmic side of it gets a little bit, when the rhythms aren't cool, or when there's too much in one song. Like a lot of times I feel like that's what's happening. It's like there's no, like a Greg Howe song can have this thing where it's just like you start asking, like, is this a solo or the melody? Is this a second solo? Is this like supposed to be like a second solo with a slightly different guitar tone? Like what's this weird things about the music that like you just wouldn't do in a great song, just all of a sudden they're in the song and you're just like, what's going on? So yeah, I mean, I would say it's like it operates like obviously like with a simpler harmonic thing, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. um, it's just when things become tasteless, but I mean there's just as much bad fusion as there is bad shred,
Right. Yeah, it's
I
kind
would
of
say.
a fusion is a four-letter word kind of thing, where you think fusion and you might think like indulgent 10-minute jams on a vamp or something from the late 70s.
Right,
Um,
right. Or even worse, like the 80s shit with the synths, with the Hawaii shirts and the calculator watches.
is that the Beach Boys? Is that
you
like
like Spyro Gyra, just like
yeah.
straight up from your elevator. It's like, again, there's something good about that. It's like it grooves, and it's like, you feel like you're playing Leisure Suit Larry or something. It's all right. But yeah, but I mean, to get back to your original question, I was actually lately, like the last year, I was nerding out on some Holdsworth stuff because I was doing this series called How to Holdsworth with Brett Stein on YouTube, and he wrote the book about all the Holdsworth scales, which I was previously unaware of. I assumed I would always kind of like go back and check out Holdsworth and try to analyze what's happening unsuccessfully. And you see fragments of things, like this is diminished scale, this is whole tone. But then Brett really figured out what he's doing, which is using 9-note scales,
Okay.
and all the harmonies that come out of 9-note scales. And I was trying to really practice that for a while. And then I sort of gave up because I was like, this is leading to a place that I don't like musically, too
Right.
dissonant, too out for me. The Holdsworth approach is more like, no, sorry, the Henderson approach is more just like you know, anybody who just does harmonic things, like, altered, diminished, some
Right.
outlet, just like Michael Brecker or anything. It's really coming out of like, modern jazz, just with a lead, with like a rock tone.
Right.
And I find myself way more in that territory
Right.
when I'm playing.
Does the music of Israel influence you in any way that's intentional?
Yeah. I mean, not. I wouldn't say intentional. I think compositionally, it's just, you know, when you have like when you sit down to write a song, like I always think about it like it's a very simple process. Like if you let it be, and at the end of the day, all it is you sitting with an instrument or without an instrument. Ask yourself one simple question, like what is awesome, right? And then you just try to do that. Like, what's an awesome melody? What's an awesome groove, right? It doesn't matter, like, even like the point you enter the process from. It needs to come out of like, there's this thing that I think is really awesome. I want to do it. Hopefully with people eventually. Hopefully it will become something cool. But you're just trying to like find something that you can sort of fish out of like this ocean of creativity into reality and just start chiseling at it from that point. And for me, like, I think a big part of it has to do with the things you had some sort of emotional reaction to earlier in life. And just a lot of the music I grew up listening to is not even like I don't know, when I've noticed that when I talk about Israeli music, people like, have the connotation like, like a bunch of savages dancing around a fire playing like a lute and having some sort of like ceremony. Like it's not like that. It's just like pop from the 60s and 70s that's harmonically informed by, I would say, like classical music, like a lot of Russian folk, Eastern European folk. So, and a lot of the gypsy music and tango and all things from that part of the world all draw from the same places harmonically. They tend, and klezmer too, it's like, it's a lot of the same harmonic progressions, like minor keys, some like sub fives are in there, definitely a lot of secondary dominants. So like the certain chord progressions I tend to like use again and again and again and sound good to me, like yeah, like a lot of chromatic bass lines and things that are less, I mean, I think in my band that's something that we sort of instinctively put a lot in, not intentionally, just because those are the kind of melodies we think they're awesome, we just gravitate towards a certain kind of melody, a certain kind of harmony that's really different than a lot of the stuff you hear now. I think a lot of, straight up like American fusion has way more blues and gospel in it. And
Right.
that's just a different take on where things go in terms of like structures.
Right. Yeah, the chiseling imagery is interesting. It reminds me of this Michelangelo quote that he would see the statue in the marble before he even started. Then he would like free it from the marble. He would chisel away at it and like reveal it. It would reveal itself to him, which is maybe the opposite as one might think. But when I'm listening to your music, I was geeking on, was it Dirty Horse, your
Yeah,
2022 album?
yeah.
Like insert cliche jazz musician lingo, like, dude, it was so killing, man.
Thank you.
No, it's fantastic. It's fantastic.
I
And
appreciate it.
so I'm listening to these melodies and wondering about the process, and particularly have you must write the chord progression first. I guess it's a two-part question. Are you writing it yourself, or is it a collaborative from the onset with your other bandmates, or are you starting with a chord progression and writing the melody to the chord progression? How does that go?
So, okay, so Marbin is a combination of my last name, Rabin, and Markovich, which is the saxophone player, and we've always
Both
written the
Danny's,
music.
right?
Yeah, both Danny's, and we both wrote all the music together, for the most part. Sometimes, like I'll bring something in, or he'll bring something in that's kind of like more complete, and we'll just sort of go over it and polish it. With the fast melodies that we play in unison, it's very rarely like what tends to happen is I'll write something and it would just not be possible on saxophone,
Right.
or he'll write something that won't be like possible on guitar, and like I have a pretty good like intuition when I'm learning something on the guitar, like with whatever technique I have, like I have a pretty good intuition if something is like you know 200 hours of practice away or 2,000 hours of practice away, right? And if it's like in the 100, 200 hours practice away, I might go ahead and be like, okay, I'll figure it out. Just give me time, and I'll figure out a clever way of doing this. But if it's like something, like just like wide intervals like that, I would have to like become a different guy before I can play this melody. I'm like, let's just change some of these notes, because the rhythms are hard, but they're never really a problem. There's a thing I can do. I just need to adjust something. So we'll look at like the way that the melody is sitting on the harmony and be like, okay, well, a lot of these notes could be different things just to make it easy. So we tend to come up with some sort of technical compromise that works on both guitar and saxophone. Right, that's a little bit different from the original idea, just to make it work easily on both. Because we know if there's like a real hard part, I know what's gonna happen. I'm not gonna want to play it. So it's like when we call tunes, because we don't have set lists when we play shows, we just be like, let's play this one, let's play this one. It's not like a huddle. Somebody's just calling tunes and people go with it. But like if there's like a thing where it's like I'm scared of, I know it's coming, then I know I'm not gonna want to call it, and it's just a shame to have another song be sacrificed in that way. So I just like will change little things to make it a little bit easier. Not that anything's easy. It's just flowy. Like if there's something that really breaks my technical flow. So that goes on. I will say that we go about 90% of the time it's melody first when it's written, and 10% of the time it's riff whenever there's a riff. So like that last song on Dirty Horse started from a riff. And we wanted to do like a thing. That riff was the beginning of that thing, and then we like, kind of like a fast gospel thing. And then it's just like, okay, and then it's just, honestly, it's like mostly, it's weird because we play like, we do like a lot of fast melodies, but most of the writing for me is singing rhythms that I think would be really cool on the groove. Right. So it's like zero of it is something that like I don't have like vocal access to. Like, we have one of our songs that did better than a lot of others called African Shop Tie, and it has kind of like a crazy rhythmic intro, and it's like I think about it like it's in 5/4 except for a bar of 6, but it doesn't matter how you count it. It's like, to me that was like, it was a rhythm. It was so like for me, like that's sort of how I think about it, kind of like a drummer. I think about like what would be like a really cool like rhythm to play and how you'd articulate it on the instrument. And in fusion, like that's really like when I'm studying people, when I listen to people, first and foremost, that's what I hear. When if Scott Henderson plays a really cool line, like I don't care if it's like Lydian dominant going to altered going to this. Like I just, this famous line, Dolomite, it's and again, it's like I always just listen to the groove. So that's sort of like how I approach melody. It's like the power of the rhythm and how you make it sit in time against the groove. Right?
That's so funny. I wasn't expecting that because listening to your stuff as such a rhythmic component to it. I assumed, oh, you guys must be writing this together, and the drummer must be like really have a hand in writing these melodies because it's such a rhythmic melody. It would have to be like, I'm assuming synergized in that way, but it's coming from you. You're starting your melody from a rhythmic place. That was not the answer I was expecting.
Yeah, I mean, like the notes, it's like it's such a, maybe with the exception of Alan Holdsworth, who did some like, things that are more complicated, mysterious, and dissonant. For most of us, we use pretty like normal tools.
Mhm.
It's nothing too crazy. It's just some modes of melodic minor, some diminished scale, a few modes of harmonic minor, all the modes of major, some pentatonics.
Right.
And you just gotta, after a while, you sort of run the gamut of the harmonies you like and what fits them. But rhythm is infinite, and especially that combination of rhythm and articulation. I think that's the missing for a lot of people. Like they think about rhythm like, like I'm going to practice rhythm, and they like buy like a rudiment book, or that's assuming that people are serious students. But like you buy a drum book, and you just have them written out, and you work on the rhythm against the metronome. But there's something about singing rhythm that like it adds a layer of articulation to the rhythm. Like you're mixing sounds. That's the thing people I think don't understand. Like, take the example of like just the word bebop, right? It's like changing the syllable, the vowel sounds from a B to a ba gives you like it's like the idea of like a low drum and a high drum playing eighth notes, so instead of like ta 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 ta, it's like ba 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 like ba ba ba, right? And then like just mixing two sounds playing eighth notes instead of like like ta 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 do that do that do do da do da do it's like it swings all of a sudden because you're mixing, and it's like you learn how to articulate that way when you play to create the motion. And I think like when you're writing a good jazz melody, first and foremost, it's like, it's supposed to do this thing on top of the groove. It's like you hear like that, that first melody in that album in Dirty Horse, the one that goes on Freeman Massacre. It's like, it's, if you just read it, it's like, but it's like, it's like, tahe, taha, 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 so I'm thinking about like, how to put like again, it's nothing special, just hammer-ons and pull-offs, but it articulates the rhythm in a way that's super intentional. Like none of it is, that's not the part you want to leave to autopilot, I would say,
Right.
when you're organizing your playing.
Element, addiction element.
Exactly.
Have you worked on Indian music at all? Because like what you're doing.
Yes. Yes. And not I mean, so I don't like Indian music. I find it extremely boring and annoying when I listen to it. Like just being honest, I tried a lot of times, but it's just like, oh my God, song one is 37 minutes, and it's starting out like Adrian with like yoga with Adrian for like ever, so it's a little bit hard for me. It's not palatable for me, but I did study sort of day one of Indian tabla school for like 10 years. So like I just took the beginning of Solkatu, like just the ability to think about rhythmic groups apart from speed. So that's something that I did a lot of study on. So like the basic idea is that you have 5 rhythmic ways of grouping sounds together. So ta, taka, takita, takadimi, and tadikinatum, right? And to get to other groupings, you just combine them. Like 6 would be like takita takita or takatakadimi. 7 would be takadimi takita. 8 would be takadimi takadimi. But there's a lot of wisdom compacted in that system. And then you just start singing rhythms, right? So, I mean, I remember, for instance, something more intricate. It's like you take a bar of 30-second notes. And then you ask yourself, okay, you have 32 notes in 4 beats, right? Boom. How can you break that up into groupings that are more interesting, right? So like, if you think about like 7 plus 7 plus 7, that's 21, and then 5 and 6 give you the rest of what you need. So like takadimi takita takadimi takita takadimi takita takadimi takita sorry takadimi takita takadimi takita takadimi takita tadikina takita takita 2. So that's like 5 or 7 7 7 5 6. But then like you think about it in a groove. Takadimi takita takadimi takita takadimi takita tadikina takita takita and then you find a way to just, just do like a scale descending. So it's a way of organizing things in a speed to add up to what you want, like a long drum fill.
Right.
And then you can get into like, okay, well, I can do that with any, like instead of I can take the speed of 6 couplets, right? Or like takadimi takita, takadimi takita, takadimi takita, takadimi takita, just develop a feel for how different groupings work in that. Which would be like a different sum of notes. But so I did a lot of that, and that's useful in fusion because it strengthens your connection to groupings apart from speed and their ability to like take pulse units and subdivide them into like whatever, like trying to play quintuplets. That's Alan Holdsworth. A lot of the things he's playing are double quintuplets, meaning like 10 notes in one beat. So it's like if you can't hear that, you're not going to be able to, even if you know where to put your fingers, you're not going to be able to play it in time. Right. So it's like if you take eighth notes, like 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and start thinking about each one of those divided into 5, right? Like people like hippopotamus, hippopotamus, yeah. hippopotamus, 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 hippopotamus. But I'd see it like in a groove. So hippopotamus, hippopotamus. But the thing about that system that's so smart is that it gives you patterns that use all the possible. It's just like picking. If you had to play consecutive downstrokes all the time, it'd be very limited speed wise. But really, if you think about the ways you can produce notes, you have 2 motions here, and then you have the ability to play legato. So it's like you have a couple of ways to divide the motion to make like patterns that are sort of easier to execute. And the same goes with singing. Like if you think about consonant sounds, right? They're divided into a few spaces. There's tongue sounds like ta, right? And da, ta and da. There's k's and g's, which are in your throat, ka, ga, and then there's lip sounds like m and p, right? And ta, ka, di, mi, right? Tongue, throat, tongue, lip. Ta, ka, di, mi, 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 ta, ka, di, mi. Like takita, when you say it fast, what you're really doing is you're going at ta, ki, and then the last one is it's not a pronounced T. You keep your tongue in place to do a double. Takit, 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 right? Ta, like if you think about like tadi, ki, na, tu, m, right? The 5, the last one is sort of weird because it's tu and m. So it's like what are you doing with that m, right? You're controlling the release of the attack. 2 would be enough. That gives you the attack, but 2, right? Tadikina tum tadikina tum tadikina tum. So you're controlling not just the attack of the note, you're controlling the decay. Tadikina tum 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 tadikina. It's kind of like a 1 2 3 4 accented. So you get into that kind of. You do that enough. You just start thinking about what you're hearing in those terms automatically, I would say.
Right, so you get around the kind of focusing on the page. Well, I guess in Indian music, it wouldn't be a written component, right? It's taught just completely like phonetically, right? There's no written notation, I don't think, for Indian
Right.
music. But
No.
it reminds me of practicing slap guitar.
Yes.
Thing, where it's like a left and right hand mute, then the slap, then the pop, and then you have these different combinations thereof. But yes, super, super cool and stimulating rhythmically. Have you ever played any stuff with like a drum and bass, um, like a break beat, jungle beat with your drummer?
I've never done any of that,
Like was it
honestly.
Jojo Meyer and JJ Rabin or some? Jojo Meyer isn't one of the guys.
Yeah, Jojo
And
Mayer. Yeah, I actually took a. I mean, he opened for us in a festival, and I had to take a picture with him, and I wrote like, I can't believe I got to meet Yo-Yo Ma, and he was upset.
you guys would be perfect for each other. Side project? I don't know if there's a Denny.
Yeah, yeah. No, yeah, he's amazing. That kind of music is cool. Again, it's I tend to like to solo on simple, not busy drum shit. Like
Right.
when it's like it's like I always feel like okay, you just gotta blast through it. It's like
Yeah.
it's like everything.
Yeah.
There's no contrast. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? I really like how 30-second notes feel in fusion when done right because they're always like you listen to like that famous "Devil Take the Hindmost Holdsworth" thing. You know, it's like the groove. It's like a halftime fusion groove, and then like those 30-second notes just come and like it feels like they're tearing your head off. And it's not just what they are objectively. It's sort of like how the impact they have on like that groove, right?
Sure. Sure. Yeah, but I guess if you're playing over something that's that intense, you have no other option than to like meet them where they are, and they're nowhere to go with it unless you go kind of halftime, which would be
Yeah, I mean,
you're not soloing at that point; they're soloing at that point.
it's exactly that. I mean, if you listen to like a modern Jeff Beck album, you know, like you
Nadia.
had yeah, that exactly Nadia and things like that. That's sort of like the way to really do it well in my mind. Like that's a great song, and you know, he's just like wah wah way 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 wah, 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 just like you know, playing with like he's Louis Armstrong, just like way behind, and then it's like you know, letting the people freak out, and that's way more palatable because then you know you're creating that contrast to those fast rhythms. But when everybody's just you know shredding 30-second notes at the same time, there's something that for me like never really works. Like I can listen to it more than I can play it honestly because when I'm playing that way, I always feel like oh, does everybody hate me right now? You know, it's
Right.
like I have this really deep like ick. Like it's like this isn't working.
Yeah.
This is not.
Do you have a sign in your band, like if that's
Oh
happening?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, whenever I play a bad note, I I always because you know how people tell you like it's like oh when you make a mistake you're the only one noticing it. You know like people in the audience don't notice when you make a mistake. Most it's like I would say 100% of people who don't give a shit don't notice. But every single time I look at like Danny, like saxophone player in my band, when I'm soloing and I hit something weird, he's like
Yeah.
he's like that's the
Do you
he
then
goes
play it
like
again?
this.
You play it a second time and be like,
I
I
try
noticed
not
that.
to, but yeah, it's. I'm in a situation where, unfortunately or fortunately, I have at least one person always listening and holding me accountable. So I really try to not play any excessively weird shit.
Well, your
That's
audience is fusion head, so I mean they have to be aware of what's going on. My mom's not
yeah, yeah. I mean,
guitar.
it's like I think a lot. I I never know because some people just people are into free jazz. People are into like really chromatic stuff. So it's like I don't know if somebody is like so stretched out to where like they can't feel what I'm putting in them. It's like they have no concept of like what it's supposed to be. Uh, so, but I certainly know when I hit something that like I never try to play any flat nines on major seven chords on purpose. And I'm not like all those guys who oh, oh, what a bold choice on my part. It's mostly like
Double
yuck.
double harmonic major. That's Javier Nagila, right? I think it is.
Well, some would call that an enclosure that's not really a part
Oh,
of the
okay.
mode.
Well, that is telling in terms of the approach, the fundamental approach, right? Because that's very much like the jazzer concept. Like you could get there from kind of either direction, right? But so if you teach a rock, if a jazz person is talking about that sort of approach, it's an enclosure. But if you try and like round peg through square hole a like rock musician's approach into it, then it's like, well, what would it
Ye-
be?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing about harmony that's so weird. It's like if you're trying to talk about scales, I think a really good starting off point, which nobody does by the way, is define what a scale is. So if a scale is whatever combination of notes, then why study, let's say, the major scale over some 11 note scale, right? Like just, let's say, everything except for F. Like, why is that not a scale? Or why isn't a triad a scale? Or, whatever, some sort of four-part chord scale. What is, you know what I mean? Like, what is it? What is it about a group of notes that makes it a scale? So I would, and why, and I don't think you can define what a scale is unless you define what you are trying to get out of them, like what you're trying, what they're used for.
Right.
So in my world, a scale is the bridge between melody and harmony, right? A scale is something that when I make permutations of it, I get all the combinations of melody notes that are available over the chord tones that same scale produces. So if I, let's say, have a double harmonic minor and I start stacking thirds, I'm going to start having some really weird shit happen, right? Because I have like some sort of major 7 chord, like E, like let's say it's an E, then I have a major 7 chord with a flat 9. But like, would I play a major 7 chord with a flat 9 in it ever? Like, I understand it like this, like there are ways of using those notes melodically that work, but are all of the harmonic structures, when I stack the notes of it against themselves, viable? And the answer is like some of them are just so dissonant that they
Right.
don't give you, they don't arm you with good options over chords, and they don't produce chords. The way I define a scale, so there's 5 rules. Number 1, cyclical every octave. No such thing as 2 octave scale. So if I have C, D, E, F, G in one octave, I'm not gonna have a G flat in the second one. Number 2, no interval smaller than a half steps.
Okay.
So
Right.
it's like no quarter steps. That belongs in, Indian music, Arab music, not in this kind of music that has harmony.
Right.
Number 3, and this is where you start losing people, is that a scale only exists in idea world. It's an abstraction, right? So in practice, you're always playing a mode. When you are actually using the notes of a scale, you can't actually play a scale. A scale is just a name for that group of notes in no particular order. If you play bo da 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 da, it's like you're hearing a tonal center. So you're playing in Ionian mode if you're playing bo do 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 ba dee do dee do. It's like you're organizing those notes even without a bass player to where you're hearing like Dorian or Ionian. That's the name. Modes are just like the names of the perceived sounds of those scale tones against one of themselves as the center, right?
Well, do you think that
And
that's about the chord? You can't like really think about them outside of the chord, right? And that's where a lot of people get confused.
I think people get confused because it's an abstract. First, it's people have a hard. I mean, okay, smart people don't get confused. you know, uh, I'm not talking like IQ wise, just musically smart. And you're not born that way. You got to work on it. But like it's okay to be a musical dumbass in the beginning. It's just like a kid doesn't know how to shit in the potty. until you teach him to shit in the potty, and then like when he needs to shit, he goes to the potty after a while. So it's sort of like that. You don't know until you know, and it's no use pretending. But it's something you gotta meditate on for a long time before it sinks in. So I would say a good definition for modes is scale minus a tonal center, and a good definition for scale is a good definition for mode is scale plus a tonal center, and a good definition for scale is mode minus a tonal center. So it's the first thing you've got to come to terms with is the idea that as perceivers of music, we always hear it relative to something. We don't have the ability to hear things not relative to anything. The moment you play something, there's either an implied tonal center, which is just playing a melody, and like by the way the contours and the rhythm as you imagine what one is, or you have a bass note, and then your ear hears the relationship.
Sure.
And that's just a musical reality. It's just like a phenomena of perception that's just true. Now, when you get past that, I would say the next part in what a scale is not having two half steps in a row,
Right.
ever. You never have a situation where you have D, D sharp, and E, even if you, and then for a lot of people that's difficult because they learned about structures like blues scales and bebop scales that
Right.
have that and have the word scale in them, even
Right.
though it doesn't fit my definition of what a scale is.
Right.
And then
It's
the
like
last,
classification.
yeah. So, and I think that at that point, like I explain to people that there's a difference between things working melodically and working harmonically, and like double harmonic major, double harmonic scales, like will belong in that category. And then the last bit is that you fill the octave with as many notes as you can, which also take pentatonic scales out of that equation. And they're not scales by that definition, they're subsets of scales.
Right.
And if you then just take a look, let's say from fret 0 to fret 11 on one string, and ask yourself, how many ways can I space notes out in one key to where there's not three half steps in a row and as many notes as I can fit? And there are only 33 ways to do that. And they all fall in 7 parent scales. Four of them are diatonic scales: major, melodic minor, harmonic major, and they each have 7 modes. So that's 28 ways out of the 33 ways. One of them is whole tone. 2 of them are the 2 modes of diminished, half whole and whole half. And then 2 of them are the 2 modes of augmented, which are half step minor third or minor third half step. That's it. And they will give you every possibility for 4-part harmony, meaning every kind of 1, 3 or flat 3, 5 or flat 5 or sharp 5, 7 or flat 7, or double flat 7 if it's diminished, with every set of tensions in between.
Right.
So the whole story of playing over chords is solved in terms of like, in a pop way, meaning like, and again, it's wider than most people use, right? It's like most people don't use a lot of modes of harmonic major, or they don't use the augmented scale, like, with the exception of some Miles Davis tunes. So to me, like, that area of music is sort of like, it's like checkers or something. It's a really complicated game, but it's a solved game.
Right.
It's like there's a way to play a perfect game.
What was your access point for that? Is it like the sacred G line? Is it like mapping on a circle all 12 tones and then come up with combinations like that? Or did you play it on your guitar to think about that? What's your access point for figuring that out?
The Danny, the saxophonist in Marbin, his brother, who's a computer engineer but started off being like a jazz piano player, figured it out on his own and taught it to Danny. And when Danny and me met, it's like, I practiced scales growing up. I just assumed, like everybody, there's like, I don't know, either infinity scales or thousands, or like, I just didn't know how many. I just knew it's like I should practice some melodic minor, some whatever, diminished and major, which is true. I mean, that's a good chunk of what's there. But Danny kind of had the answer for me. And from that point was like, okay, well, then it's more like, okay, let's write tunes and put it to the test. See like what do I play over, and there are some situations where you have to use options for some reason that you didn't like, that are a little bit more rare. Like a lot of times we'll have tunes that will have, let's say the mixolydian that comes from harmonic major. You know what I mean? And that's a weird sort of scale, right? It's like it has a flat 9 and a natural 13. And just the melody works out to just use those notes, and that's kind of similar to half whole diminished on a dominant chord, because it's like that, but it doesn't have the sharp 9. Or the third mode of harmonic major sometimes, or like the fourth mode of harmonic minor, like you have a minor melody with like a Dorian sharp 4, or the fourth mode of harmonic major, which is in a lot of Holdsworth tunes, like a melodic minor with a sharp 4. Again, it's like those things, like they're just inside that system, but they're just the more rare occasions,
Right. When you're playing over dominant chord and you're kind of referencing those tones, you're not really thinking, oh, it's, Phrygian dominant versus Lydian flat 7 versus whatever Mixolydian flat 9. You're just kind of like observing the intervallic relationship and flowing with it. Like I assume at this point you've moved in real time, you really have moved beyond any kind of like scale analysis, right? Is it's energized at this point, or like how much are you drawing from that?
So I mean, I would say, like, you always aspire to not think, and there are like a lot of situations where there's zero thinking for me. But like, it will be a lie to say that I don't like eat shit live, right? And it's like when I eat shit live, I always kind of make a mental note, and then next time I'm with the guitar, I'm like, okay, what happened there? And then I go back, like, to the same stuff, like arpeggios that come out of the scale, and like, oh, it's usually like, oh, like, oh, like I didn't make the connection between this like big thing I know and this moment in the song, right? Or like maybe like I kept trying to like play something on the chord before that sent me to an area of the neck that's like a little bit dark, like a little bit maze-like in that key for me. Right? It's like it needs to be like some sort of whatever, like a melodic minor thing around the 9th fret, and like I just end up in this area, and I just need to like, oh, like this is here, that's there, and I need to like just go back slowly, and calmly at home to just kind of like see some things, and then get back to that place of not thinking about it.
Do you cover this in your course, your JTC course? Is that still the current course that you're?
No, I had that one was just all about just rhythmic phrasing. It did very poorly. I think people didn't. It's weird. Like I don't know, man. I like that company. They're nice people, but I think the aesthetic there, like the kind of players they have, is like I feel really old. I feel like I come at it from a different, like it's like they have a lot of guys that like I just could never sit there and like record a solo like 300 times to like get like a perfect 45 seconds. It's like the Instagram guitar. They have a lot of those guys. It's an entirely different thing.
It's different to when did you leave Berkeley? You graduated in 2007?
Yeah.
What do you like about being a musician in 2024 that was not the case in 2007?
What don't I like, or what do I like?
Yeah, both.
I think we missed the party, so it's all bad. The party was right before the real party for people was, you know, I'd say probably 2000 to 2010,
Yeah.
and when in between CDs in between CDs and streaming, there was a golden era of being able to sell downloads,
Yeah.
and people made a ton of money. Like I talked to some people who made like I don't know, $300,000 a year selling their music, um, and that was sort of over. I mean, I never wanted to make content. I wanted to tour, and I did. I toured for a decade, and like right until COVID, and then we continued touring through COVID, honestly, and then it kind of slowed down for us from that point on because of like personal stuff like family
Sure.
and stuff like that, which nobody told me that was coming, but it's part of life, which is great. But that. So I got to do that, and we made a ton of fans, and they still make our lives possible, and it's great. Um, yeah, the overemphasis of producing like very short format videos, it's not that it's not awesome. I think people really enjoy it. Not me per se, but it gets a lot of people into guitar, which is great. Um, it does create a hyper focus on sort of, and I never thought I'd be the guy to say it because I love technique, but really for technique's sake, and also technique that's visually powerful.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of guys who just the way they move their fingers, the way they wiggle looks cool. You close your eyes and you listen to them, it's like not that cool, but like there's something about them that's just fun to watch for 45 seconds.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, and some people are great. I don't know, like and Kuzo is like obviously like very good. It's impressive to see. I went to see him actually in Chicago. My student bought tickets, and it was very funny. I loved. First of all, I love America. I just loved. A lot of people were screaming screaming in fake Italian accents, and I was just like, that's the best. Like, my God, just love being here. It's like, oh, Mancuso. It's just like, dude, perfect. And I realized because it's like, in a way, like honestly, like the hater in me was a little bit tickled because you see a guy and he's like in his 20s and just like packed, like sold out rooms playing. It's like every fusion player's like dream of how it's gonna work out, and he's obviously like amazing. But I was looking around, I was just like, man, I thought people want to get like railed, but apparently Americans just wanted to get finger banged. Uh, so yeah, that was my
Nothing in
conclusion.
between. It's a
Yeah.
binary.
Yeah. No, but he's very good. I would say he's like he's somebody that like you close your eyes and you listen to him playing, and it's like there's definitely something there, and so it's undeniable and it's strong. But a lot of the other kind of stuff you see on Instagram is kind of like, I don't know. It's the same shit, just packaged differently, like real clean.
Right.
It's yeah. So I would say that like for me, something about how the time frame of absorbing music shrunk to like 30 seconds of a guitar solo out of context
Right.
makes it like it's what I think Andy Warhol said it, that like the medium defines the the art form, and I think that's very true. I mean, I think when you're trying to compress what you do, like if you're like a soloist, and take the song out of the equation, or get through the song and the solo and everything in 40 seconds,
Yeah, forget
it's
the
just
album, right? The album used to be the art form for me, and it's just You're saying
Yeah,
forget the song, forget the album, forget the song. It's like say what you need to say in its entirety.
yeah. I mean, because it's like there's a thing about cutting the fat off something, but it's like, man, you're cutting a lot more than the fat. It's like, to me, that's not the. It's just not the music. Like, it's not. I don't even know. I don't even know how to compare it because it seemed like for a while it felt like it was promotional material for artists, but then there was a generation that it was just promotional material. That it wasn't. It was the thing. It became
Right.
the essence of what they do. That's all they do. They don't make albums, or if they make albums, the albums are kind of weird, like made by people that clearly don't listen to a lot of albums. Um, the exciting things about them are the 45-second snippets. You
Sure.
know, that's what they do well.
It's a
And
hybrid.
it's a weird kind of twist of things. So I would say as a listener, not even as a musician, like I just don't like consuming it. And I don't like finding myself in a world where there's a sort of expectation to do that. Like, you know, even with content, I had to like really search long and hard, and like, you know, we have a channel, and making long form instructional material was way more up my alley
Right.
than.
Right.
But you know, it's like the kind of people I admired. It was always like, you know, people who had this like you listen to Oscar Peterson. It's just it's not that like it's obviously like everything he does is amazing, but like it's this feeling that like he's able to just kind of have infinite ideas, infinite creativity. Like that's like the solos are long. It's just like one thing after the other. It keeps like hitting you. It's like that's what I really like. Not and you know, like a lot of the modern players, like, you know, you see them play live, and it's like after 3 or 4 songs, they're like it kind of ran the like they hit you already with everything they have, and now you feel like they're hitting you again in a different order.
Right. Right.
It's not improvised in exactly the same way. Like, not to say that like obviously everybody has limited vocabulary, but there was a sort of like really not, it wasn't worked out in the same way. It didn't feel like mega licks. It was just somebody assembling the ideas into lines, into like powerful lines in front of you. That was the magic, you know? And I still think that's the magic. I think that's the only thing really interesting about this style of music. I mean, I'll never forget seeing Orchestrion by Pat Metheny, the tour with the robots.
Okay.
And
Wait, how did I
like,
miss this?
yeah, so this was like, I don't know, 12 years ago. And Metheny, like, like, you know what, like, it's kind of like a player piano
Okay.
that plays itself. He just had an orchestra of robots playing all sorts of instruments, like vibraphones and this. He like, it was like seeing like a rich kid playing with the toys that only he could afford. But they were soloing too, and it wasn't like it wasn't improvised. Obviously, like there was scores inside them, and he was comping for them, and he was soloing over top of them, playing rhythm, and then but they would have solos. I remember watching the robots just playing this bebop solo on a vibraphone, being like, there's nothing exciting or interesting about seeing a non-human perform.
Hmm.
It doesn't matter how killer it is. It just does. It's like you don't stop at the hospital and watch the player piano shred for more than a second. There's something just deeply uninteresting about it,
Right.
and there's something deeply uninterested in people studying how to play like robots, in the sense that you can tell that they can't take sharp turns. Like the ideas control them; they don't control the ideas. You know, it's like it's sort of like classical musicians trying to play jazz at the end
Sure.
of the day. And I think that that's the Instagram approach creates a situation where classical musicians have a gigantic advantage over jazz musicians, and you get classical musicians that play jazz basically. You get people rehearsing
Hmm.
a sequence of motions, cleaning it up, doing it incredibly well, and performing it to a camera, and that's what you're consuming, and it's under the guise of improvisation. And when you see them improvise, they're able to take very long chunks and shoot them at you in a variety of ways, but they don't. It's not linguistic. It's not the way that, like, you know, a Clark Terry or, you know, whoever, or Wes Montgomery or Pat Metheny or Michael Brecker or Scott Henderson would play. There's something about their ability to take turns with any piece of information that's just way more exciting for me.
Right. Do you think that it's going to pendulum the other way and go back to or go to long form sort of content, or do you think it's going to get even more distilled into like an even smaller fragment than it already is?
Um, well, I mean, I think it will continue going the way it goes, which is like the mainstream is going to go more into short form,
Right.
and there will be, a part of the fringe that rejects it. I think at the end of the day, the music, like I don't want like to create a world order where people are forced to listen to fusion. Uh, like and explain to them that it's good for them. It's something very specific that does a very specific thing that has like a lot of it is kind of childish too, in a way that like it gets me, but a lot of it is like I'm gonna play really fast, like that's a big part of it, and like playing fast is awesome. I've tried to explain to my wife why I couldn't, my favorite thing is like playing a fusion show at like a normal kind of venue,
Yeah.
and the a lot of time like I've been in a situation 1,000 times where there's like a chick that gets really into like the rock riff and the screaming guitar solo for the first like 25 seconds of the solo, and you see they're like, yeah, and then like they have this moment where they realize like, oh no, this is the whole night.
Yeah.
And then they're just like, no, abort, abort, I don't want this, because some I think everybody can see the beauty of it for a very short amount of time,
Right.
but as the whole thing, it's a hard sell. But for the people who like it, for me there's nothing like it. Like I don't care. I don't want to see a rock band playing songs.
Right.
I don't care.
The improvisational element is the journey and the reward for you.
Yeah, but it's like I'm stretched out. I need something big.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how it goes. There's no going
Yeah.
back. There's no, you can't send them back to the farm after they've seen the Great Perry or whatever the expression is.
Yeah.
Um, you mentioned the students, and I just your students, and I know you have a Patreon page, so I just wanted to
Yeah.
ask about that. But you mentioned that you're doing some long form stuff versus like all of the, I'm sure you've seen like popular short form stuff, and it's just like I know a lot it's popular. I know like on my end for Guitarmalade what resonates with people. I just wonder how like really impactful that is. Like does that really translate, or is it just I don't know. I guess the algorithm is it only goes so far. It doesn't like check back in on these people like 2 years later to see if the shit worked. But a lot of the stuff that does the best online, I just think, really, like this is the
Yeah.
thing. This is the thing that you think is gonna make you better, or
I wouldn't trust it. I mean, I'm not saying there's a conspiracy against a certain kind of format, but the way the algorithm works is winner take all. So the better your your video does, the better it's gonna do. So for a lot of people, like if you're a Beato or that whatever Dutch, or there's like
right?
a jazz guy. Uh,
Paul Davids is I think
yeah. So if you're one of those guys, you're grandfathered in, so you can release any sort of like this is how you play Neon by John Mayer for the 1,000th time. How you really play it. The mistake, 10 mistakes everybody makes playing Neon, and that will go to like millions of people. But that doesn't mean anything because they've already got to a place where whatever they put out is going to get that initial push, and if it's an exceptionally good, well-made video that people like for one reason or the other, it will do even better than their normal stuff. With YouTube, there seems to be this magical number around 8 minutes for videos to catch or shorts. I was in the beginning. I was trying to do some extremely long form stuff, and I know that doesn't do well.
Right.
yeah, you gotta figure out what's gonna work for you. I think pay like I for a while I was trying to make YouTube content that's also kind of like our Patreon content and make it early release for the Patreon. Then I realized that's a mistake, that YouTube is a very specific thing and where you get to, teach, but you also there's an entertainment value there
Sure.
that if it's not there, you're not going to do too well. Not to say that I'm some sort of guru of videos do okay, but they're not like insane. But on Patreon, it's more like hardcore teaching. Like I practice with people. I do like monthly group Zoom lessons with the people there, and I'll show. I'll have things on my mind. Like for instance, I always had a really hard time visualizing half whole diminished. I would
Yep.
just something about the guitar. It's like
B string.
if you say again.
The B string.
Yeah, the B string, for instance. But
Like arpeggio, diminished arpeggio. Check.
yeah, right. But yeah, like the diminished scale, it's so samey everywhere that it's hard to know what chord it's relating to, where you are, how to not get lost, how to connect a couple of chords. And I came up with like a system of explaining it to myself. It was just very powerful. And so I'll just kind of like make videos with tabs for people on our Patreon to just, you know, do a real deep dive that nobody is gonna like. YouTube is just not the place for that. It's
Sure.
like it would be useful for some people, but so many people will fall off that it would just bury the video. So yeah, our Patreon is more like a place where I get to do some actual teaching. And YouTube is a combination of, you have a snappy concept that could help, and then you try to make it funny,
Right. Right.
And yeah, I mean, like you're doing a good job with the memes. Sorry for stealing your memes, by the way.
It's
Still a
no
bunch.
problem. It's
Yeah,
my pleasure. My pleasure.
yeah.
It's funny. But I keep joking to my wife that I'm a meme lord, and she's
You're
like,
pretty good.
she's like, she's like, how does it feel? Do you tell your friends whose husbands are in finance and that you're like the head of major gifts at this foundation that you're the meme lord? She's like, self-proclaimed. I'm like, numbers don't lie, baby. The numbers don't lie. Anyway.
Nice.
So I heard this a while ago, and it was like if you want to be a truly great teacher, you have to specialize on a certain like niche of student. I don't know if that's true or not, but does that resonate with you? Because I'm sure a lot of people
Uh,
come to you for this for a thing.
yeah, I mean, um, I think I think that first of all, I'm not sure if I'm a great teacher, so that's I'll put that out there. I think I'm okay, uh, but you know, and I don't think, but I'll put a caveat in there that for what I consider to be great players, which is like how would you measure? I would say a good question is how you measure yourself as a teacher,
Right,
right? So and I don't think many teachers spend any time thinking about that.
right,
So if you think about the progress of your students, that's probably a pretty good way. But like what are you like? Are you trying to make them into something? And a lot of people are like, well, trying to make them achieve their goals. Scoop: students don't have goals. 90% of them have no goals,
right,
and I think that I uh, I really try to get people thinking, to get people to understand that past a certain point, um, a mechanical approach to the instrument is not going to carry you any farther. And again, yeah, I mean, I certainly specialize, I would say, in people that have some sort of curiosity about either fusion or gypsy jazz, which are both styles that I play. Um, and and some sort of curiosity about improvising and uh, the mental discipline that involves. Um, but yeah, I mean, for me, like if I have like a straight up rock player that's what they want to do when they grow up, it tends to just not work long term because honestly, like I don't know what to tell them after a while. Just learn the solos. You know, just learn go like just go online. It's all there. You know what I mean? Like if
Oh,
there's like what could I mean like but again you can say that about fusion or anything else. I think for me it's just like I don't I'm not specialized in that. So for me it kind of feels like there's nothing left to say. Whereas like if you're really curious about how to improvise rhythms or how to get into like some weird melodic minor thing or how to work on whatever like your technique, but like in this intersect like you know on the groove and like again the nitty gritty. I feel like we could talk about that forever. So
right, right. Yeah, I guess
so
it's Alan Watts like in the terms of like people not knowing their goals, where it's like the only to really know it, you would have had to have done it and achieved it. Otherwise, it's just you know the idea of the thing.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I don't know. It's a funny thing. It's kind of like the plight of the personal trainer, where it's like you're they're not going to do the work, but they're going to keep showing up. I don't know, or like that they're never going to realize their goals or whatever. But I think kind of implicit in what you said was not putting your own expectations into the student that they're going to be like the best player that they can possibly be, because that's not really the it's not how it's going to go probably.
Yeah, well, I mean, you get moments where something clicks for somebody. You know, I think
Rewarding.
that's sort of like the thing you can hope for. You know what I mean? That like somebody has a sort of wrong framework of looking at a big issue, and all of the sudden, just you know, it's this amazing. I think it's Joe Rogan or something who's talking about language, that like it's just like I'm making sounds with my mouth and you're reading my mind. You know, it's it's sort of like that with music because you know you can talk about Dorian to somebody
Yeah.
forever without him getting anything. But at a certain point, something between the personal experience, the physicality, and the constant nagging, you can all of a sudden there's a shift, you know, where you actually have shown somebody something to where like all of a sudden they go from the outside of something to the inside of something. And from that point, it's all personal work. And that's sort of how I see it. And I find it very difficult to convince people to study with me every week because I feel like a lot of times I tell them something and it's like, dude, you need like 3 years now.
Right. Right.
You know, it's like just if you really we're gonna get this to get like this, all these things take a lot of time.
Right.
And I actually think that the plague of the modern student isn't bad information or good information, it's just too much information. Like you look at a guy like Scott Henderson, think about what kind of access to jazz information was around in the 70s. It's just like a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of what we have today. And look at the monster players that emerged in that short period of time. It was the right amount. You know, it was like a lot of free time where you're sitting there and with some tools all of a sudden that you could use, like a tape machine, you can make your backing tracks, shitty backing tracks, and a metronome and a notebook, but no computer. Like the right amount of like tools without distraction and access to actual music. It's not like, Father, please, may I buy a record? You know, it's like you already had like music,
Right.
but it's like, and people just were able to do real study. And I think that takes like a sort of I can't imagine myself becoming good now as a teenager. I think I
Yeah.
would, you know, you have to have the dial-up modem when you're really into porn to slow it down. I think that's
Take you over.
yeah, it's just too fast now. It's coming at you. You look at your laptop and you're like, I'm opening Guitar Pro or Pornhub. It's right there. Then you're like out of semen. You don't feel like doing anything. I can't see it happening now. It's too
Right.
hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just too much distraction.
It is. It is. It's too much distraction. Jerry Seinfeld said something like that too recently, where it's like too much pressure on no one's willing to suck for that long as it takes to get good, basically.
Yeah, yeah, and it's you have to be alone a lot in the beginning. Like
Yeah.
I think now, I mean, yeah, you have, yeah, it's too, it's it's not like you don't need 20 people's opinion about how to play a 2-5-1 before you. And what you see a lot too is that people, you know, instead of drinking from the fountain, you know what I mean? They would really like a bird to drink from and then throw up in their mouth. It's kind of like I'm not gonna listen to John Coltrane play giant steps, but I will listen to Rick Beato explain giant steps. Or, oh, and it's you're always studying a person, right? If you're studying tab online, you're just studying a horrible interpretation from a dumbass,
Sure.
instead of studying the recording. And it's like like this idea, like nobody likes 2-5-1 licks. But instead of studying Charlie Parker, you're gonna study some like horrible ex-Berkeley student that wrote a method book that sold 7 copies and you found online and downloaded and now are, just randomly doing like bits of a major scale because it's like you're just going for like the simplified, whereas where what you really want, what you want to get control of is the complexity. It's like you will learn more from Charlie Parker directly about everything music, like under the frame of learning 2-5-1 licks, than you would learn in 10 years studying the books.
Right.
It's just that the overwhelming feeling of going to the source is something that sooner or later you're going to have to learn how to confront. And if you wait too long, you will just arm yourself with a lot of useless garbage. You've just taken influence from people who never did anything, and I think that's the real danger. You gotta, it's sort of like, keeping a very clean diet. You just gotta be very conscious of what you put in your body musically.
Right.
If you really like Megadeth, it's just like study Marty Friedman for just do nothing but figure out those sounds and deal with them directly. It will be way worse for you to study it through breakdowns.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess maybe they don't think they can, or there's a time element too. But there's something something about that process is very informative too. If you have to listen to it and transcribe it, that's a lot of time. And by the time you get to the end of it, you've gleaned meaningful insight. And I guess the hope is that that meaningful insight would just be imparted to you in a short or something like that. And that's not really the case, I guess.
Well, I mean, I think it's the time. The problem is the illusion, right? Because the time it takes to study a solo or a lick from somebody is a lot of time, but the time it takes to get good the other way is never. You know what I mean? You'll be able. So it's in a way like you'll be able to do something with your body that you didn't want to do before, and you won't be excited about after, if you go about it the other route. You're going to not distill the point. You're going to miss the point and get everything else. So and then you
The
will.
illusion.
Yes.
Illusion of having gotten it.
So it's exactly that. It's the illusion of study, the illusion, and that's what people are selling online for the most part. Unless it's just tools, right? Like there's definitely like a time to study technique and stuff, but when you're going for the actual things that excite you about music, right, you have to deal with the music you like.
Right.
There's no way about that. There's no way around that.
Yeah, people don't like to hear that. And interested is, I forget what you said before that made me think of this, but a lot of the people are one telltale sign that someone is like not going to get something is like, oh, I kind of understand the modes. It's like, let's start with you know fucking nothing about it. Let's start with,
Yeah.
and then they can't let go of like, yeah, but they're all the same. It's like, well,
Yeah.
no, they're not. Yeah, but they are. They're all the same, and they go like they're like Legos. They go like this. It's all the same. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
a
yeah,
very
it's
common one.
of course. I mean, yeah, it's yeah, people don't like not the feeling of not knowing. You know, it's tough, and it's tough when you have a student that like that's you have to sort of. I mean, I don't remember how to be a student, a good one. Like you know, a start. You know, I don't remember the mind space of that very well. It was too long ago for me to actually relate to it, like in a way that's not like imaginary. Because like there's, I remember something, but I don't like. I have changed so much that I just don't remember like a lot of the, you know what I mean, like the
I
mental
do,
mind
I do.
space.
There was a
Um,
point when I remembered these different like epochs. I was out to dinner with a childhood friend of mine, and he asked me that. He's like, "Do you remember when you got good?" or some question like that. And at a point, I remembered, oh, when I was 9, I was like this. Then I hit this plateau at like 11, then at 15, and then like I remembered these different levels I was at, and now I just can't remember anything. You know, Berkeley
yeah,
was like 20 years ago. Uh,
yeah,
but yeah, I don't know.
yeah.
So I hear
It's
you.
weird. It's weird how that sort of disappears after a while. And then you like you know you teach a lot and you start yeah you start really. It's a weird thing, but like honestly, like I don't try to you know when I'm teaching, I really try to when somebody has a problem tries to understand something. I'm not trying to go back to where I was when I learned it or go back to something somebody told me back in the day. I just try to look down at my fretboard and give something from how I see it now.
Right.
And I think that that's the key with teaching, and that's what you want from a teacher. It's like you want the most sophisticated version handed to you, not very small building blocks to where you understand. It's almost like being inspired to learn yourself, because nobody can like really. You, most students know what they have to do. Right? If you don't know the note names, you don't know the note names. If you don't know intervals, you don't know intervals. If you don't know, like, there's just this putting one foot in front of the other, and you either commit to that process or you don't. You
Right.
know, and when you're studying with somebody who knows a lot of stuff, it's more like it's on you to bring the teacher to where you are and like use them for clarity, right? And if you're unable to, like, I hate lessons where it's like, I want to study music, I want to get better. I'm just like, better at what? You know what I mean? Like, what are you talking about? You know, it's like what? Like, to me, it's like it's somebody saying, I'm not doing anything. Can you tell me what to do?" It's just like I don't really teach people who aren't doing anything.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, do something, have questions about it, have curiosity about some other things, listen to music, want to be able to to execute some things, and let's talk about that. You know what I mean? Like, if there are problems, we can problem solve. If you're not in a place where you're trying hard enough to have problems, nobody can kick. It's like fat people, you know, wanting to go to the gym. It's like I understand you want to, but you're gonna have to just go one day. Just start going, and then go for a week, and then ask for help with perfecting motions, with what to eat. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, but nobody can get you off your couch. That's impossible. It's like it has to start with this burst of internal energy, and if it doesn't, then you know, it's just like, you know, I don't know. See if psychologist, you're a psychologist, not a teacher.
Is there a conversion factor for like minutes on the treadmill versus shorts about walking on the treadmill?
Probably.
Who did you utilize in that way? Who did you study with at Berkeley?
I studied with David Tronzo, who's like an avant-garde slide player, and that was weird. We mostly talked. I was into that music at that time. I studied with Tim Miller a little bit in 2 semesters, and that wasn't a good fit for me. He was very organized in his thinking, and like something a little bit like methodical and nerdy, and it didn't suit me. I started with McGoodrick a little bit. And he was old and grumpy by the time I got to him. Uh, and yeah, those are the main ones. A few other ones I checked out, but nothing. I didn't have good luck at Berkeley. And I did a lot of practicing there, but you know, a lot of my growth at that time was sort of like in angst, like in spite of what people were telling me. It's just like, that's not how you do it. And then like, you know, Tim Miller, I guess, was the closest thing to like fusion from the people that I studied with, but something is it was very Holdsworthy, and I was really not at the time not really interested in that.
Right.
Um, yeah, I could never really find the kind of player I wanted to study with, which I think was ultimately good. You know, it made me like. Um, it was weird. It's almost like I knew what kind of sound I wanted, and I wanted somebody to give it to hand it to me. And I was angry at people for not being able to, and it was absolutely not their fault. They were
Sure.
them, you know. They were just the wrong. They weren't even the wrong teachers. There wouldn't have been a right teacher
Yeah,
at
so
that
it had to
time.
come from you. And how did that eventually come from you? Speaking of like different epochs, was there like a certain amount of time out of college or from playing live and recording where you like blossomed into having
With
musical touch?
Marbin, you know, Marbin started for me like right when I graduated college, so it must have been 2007. I think I met Dani, and then we started playing shows pretty like right then, and um, and I was just bad. I wasn't good at playing, at soloing, and we were all of a sudden playing these tunes, started to write tunes. The first batch was not so great, you know, and then they got better.
Right.
And my soloing, I just couldn't stand. I couldn't stand the tone. I didn't think it fit. I didn't like my technique. I didn't like my choices, and but I was then just practicing from the mind space of making that better, you know, of
Right.
making that, of yeah, playing, like using that as the thing I was referencing and measuring my ability against. And I think over time, that really um, made me improve, playing a ton of shows, but always being very critical. You know, so like I would come home and really think about the moments. That's something I really try to do still. Like, you know, if there were problem moments where like the fretboard sort of turned dark for a few like bars in a song, I'm like, what happened? Like, I don't want that tomorrow, you know? So it was just taking. I don't think it's possible to get good unless you're out there playing music or recording music or doing something where you have to perform at some level and playing time. And then you just perfect. It's just, you know, you work on whatever, 10 songs that you play over and over again for people, or 20 songs or 50 songs. And I think jazz players have that really worked out with standards, you know. They
Right.
don't really improve outside of the standards, or if they play over 2 5 1s, it's always with the intention of like reinserting them back into the tunes they're working on, and the grooves they're working on, the tempos they're working on, and at least the good ones do it that way. And this constant like referencing the things you're working on back to actual music, I
Right.
think over time is the thing that will make anybody grow, because if you're just kind of jamming on backing tracks and like, you know, checking out a Dorian for a while, it's not. It's too broad of a field for you to get good at. It's not really possible past the point of location scouting on the fretboard and working like. And even if you work technique, you don't you know, you work out some sweep arpeggios or some, you know, economy picking or chromatic things, you're not going to be able to take that with you where you want to go, which is like, you know, you're going to use that eight organ for a couple of measures in this section of the solo, and then it's going to go to different places. So you got to work on things in the context of the tunes that you're working out, um, constantly. I would say constantly, like just and also I think there's something about mental space of playing tunes that you can't pause with a band. So you just gotta learn how to keep going, and then you get, you know, I always think about like, you know, I play a wrong thing, you know, or something that sounds like shit tonight, and then tomorrow I'm trying to like be mindful, and then it comes and I'm like, oh shit, it was there. It's like seventh night or something, you know, on tour. I'm like, yeah, it's like, okay, tonight, this is, you know, that's like, woohoo, like, you know, just being able to remember to pay attention in the flow of time. It's like the first couple of times you really have to make yourself you have to remind yourself and be very cognizant of the fact that you're doing that. And then after that, it becomes more flowy and natural. But you know, to work on music from that mind space of not stopping no matter what, and get calm enough to where you're actually working out things while you do that, that takes a lot of performance. And I think that's really where you get to see, you know, to reap the, you know, the benefits of practice.
Right. In the wild.
Yeah, in the wild, exactly.
Tell me about your new album. So is the new album, it's not yet released, that's right?
Yeah, it's not yet released. It's called. It's gonna be called Marbinico. It's us and Paul Werdico, and it's weird. It's not like a typical. It's more like a side project, really, but it's super exciting. Just it's a different temperature for us. It's a lot more relaxed, and it's yeah with that Pat Metheny drummer. We just took songs that all of them Danny, except for one, Danny Markovich wrote. And we just could never fit them in the Marbin thing because they were just like a different temperature, but we always liked them. And then we decided, he just went to my place and recorded like the melodies, and then I made like these big arrangements where I played everything. And it's just all guitar solos. There's no saxophone solos, which I'm very excited about. It's nice. And it's just short songs. It's a short album. It's like, I think 40 minutes. And it just yeah, one of those things that just happened fast and was really flow, just like, easy to make, like everything made sense, and there were no big hurdles, which super, it's very atypical. Usually it's not how albums go. And yeah, I don't know, it's like I feel like in terms of guitar playing, it's definitely some of my best playing. And you know, I had this realization that with Marbin, it's like a lot of trying to capture that energy of building solos and playing long solos, but a lot of the solos I love the most, like Django solos, Charlie Parker solos, they're really short.
Right.
They're like not in that 2 minute range, minute to 2 minutes range. They're more in the 30 seconds to 1 minute range inside the song. And I was trying to do a lot more of that. And there's something about like having the arc of a solo kind of get there and finish, not meander, that like, I don't know, man. It's like I haven't done that, and I'm very excited about it.
Well, you do such a great job of soloing for a long time. Some people, even if guitarists are great or whatever, like some people can do that and some people cannot do that. I just find it amazing, the well of interesting ideas, like listenable ideas, not just like high level guitar playing, but like continuous, really interesting ideas. That's
Yeah,
that's
thank you. Yeah, you know, it's like, and that I think that's all that rhythm stuff, but there's
right.
something like to make to make solos of that length. Like I don't think there are interesting 4 minute solos. I've never heard one. You know what I mean? Like I've heard ones that have moments, but like, you know, a Coltrane solo is like 4.5 minutes or 3 minutes or even 2.5 minutes. It's very long solo, and it's just hard to keep an actual arc.
Yeah,
You can have like moments.
right.
You can have like big like explosive things with the drums maybe, but it's too long for my brain, at least. I'm just not a sophisticated listener to really follow it.
Oh, I'm sure that's it. I think that's everybody. Yeah, you would like expend the listener's like short-term memory with that. You know, if it's
Yeah.
not beginning, middle, end, it's just this doesn't matter how good it is, just kind of feels meandering.
Yeah.
Or
And I
again,
mean, like Jeff Beck, is a great example of somebody who, you know, his short solos are absolutely like epic,
yeah.
and some of his longer solos are like, man, that had great moments, but I really wish it stopped and I could just, and that my long lasting impression would just be like that first chorus, for me, and so, but I would say like even like all my favorite rock guitar players, jazz players, play relatively short solos, and yeah, I was really trying to do that for once, and I remember like since I was arranging the music, I really, I was making the decision of how long the solos are going to be, and I was just like, okay, it's like, it wasn't easy for me to choose that, and I'm very glad I did. It's just it's very to the point.
Fantastic. When is that coming out?
I think we should be done mixing and like next week. So my guess is probably August, something like that.
Fantastic. And are you
Yeah,
going to tour after that?
yeah. We're constantly we're still playing shows. We're not doing like long tours now because we have little kids, and they don't make women like they used to. So our wives refuse to take care of them alone.
I can edit that out if you want. Do
No, that's cool.
you want to do 5 fast questions?
Sure.
You have to choose between two things. Okay. Amps, digital amps, modeling, or tube amps?
Tube amps.
Single coil or humbucker?
Single coil, even though I did put a humbucker in the bridge, but I kind of miss my single coil in the bridge.
Blues scale or harmonic minor?
Blue scale,
Tab or standard notation?
standard notation.
Django or Holsworth?
Django.
Bamba or Beely?
Bamba.
All right, fantastic, fantastic.